Question 1. Risk assessment procedures indicate a potential for undue influence on the admissions committee regarding a specific applicant who has a familial connection to a significant donor of the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute. The applicant's academic record shows a borderline performance against the institute's stated entry requirements. The committee member is aware of the donor's influence and the potential for future financial contributions. What is the most ethically sound and procedurally correct approach for the admissions committee member? Option A. Objectively evaluate the applicant's entire application package against the established admissions criteria, flagging any concerns regarding academic performance and potential conflicts of interest for review by the full committee, while maintaining strict confidentiality regarding the donor's connection. Option B. Recommend the applicant for admission, highlighting their potential and downplaying any academic deficiencies to foster a positive relationship with the donor and secure future funding. Option C. Expedite the admission process for this applicant, assuming their potential value to the institute outweighs minor academic shortcomings, to demonstrate responsiveness to influential stakeholders. Option D. Decline to participate in the review of this specific applicant's file due to the perceived conflict of interest, without providing any further input or justification. Correct answer is A. Objectively evaluate the applicant's entire application package against the established admissions criteria, flagging any concerns regarding academic performance and potential conflicts of interest for review by the full committee, while maintaining strict confidentiality regarding the donor's connection. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between academic integrity and the pressure to achieve positive outcomes for the institute. The admissions committee member must navigate the ethical obligation to uphold fair and objective evaluation standards against potential institutional bias or external influence. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the admissions process remains transparent, equitable, and free from undue pressure. The correct approach involves a thorough, objective review of all applicant materials, adhering strictly to the established admissions criteria of the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute. This approach is justified by the Institute's commitment to merit-based admissions, ensuring that all candidates are evaluated on their qualifications and potential, irrespective of external factors. This aligns with the ethical principles of fairness and impartiality expected of academic institutions and their representatives. An incorrect approach that involves prioritizing an applicant based on a personal connection or perceived institutional benefit, without a comprehensive review of their qualifications against the established criteria, constitutes a failure of professional integrity. This undermines the fairness of the admissions process and could lead to the admission of less qualified candidates, potentially harming the academic reputation of the institute. Another incorrect approach, which involves overlooking discrepancies or weaknesses in an applicant's profile to expedite their admission due to external pressure, violates the principle of due diligence. This can result in admitting students who may not be adequately prepared for the program, leading to higher dropout rates and a compromised learning environment. It also sets a dangerous precedent for future admissions decisions. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding and strict adherence to the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute's admissions policies and ethical guidelines. When faced with conflicting pressures or ambiguous situations, professionals should 1. Identify the core ethical principles and institutional policies at play. 2. Objectively gather all relevant information pertaining to the applicant and the situation. 3. Consult with supervisors or relevant committees if uncertainty exists. 4. Document all decisions and the rationale behind them. 5. Prioritize fairness, transparency, and the long-term academic integrity of the institution. Question 2. Process analysis reveals that a prospective student who has expressed significant interest in the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute has inquired about their eligibility for the upcoming entrance exam. The student's current academic transcripts indicate they do not fully meet the minimum GPA requirement stipulated in the institute's official entrance exam guidelines. However, the student is a highly motivated individual with strong extracurricular achievements that are not explicitly weighted in the GPA calculation for admission. The admissions officer is aware of the student's potential and wishes to encourage their application. What is the most appropriate course of action for the admissions officer, strictly adhering to the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute's entrance exam regulations? Option A. Suggest to the student that they might be able to round up their GPA by including scores from non-academic courses, which are not typically part of the official GPA calculation for entrance exams. Option B. Advise the student that while their current GPA does not meet the minimum requirement, they should still apply and highlight their extracurricular achievements in their personal statement, as the admissions committee may consider exceptional circumstances. Option C. Inform the student that their current GPA falls below the stated minimum requirement, and therefore they are not eligible to apply for the entrance exam, but provide them with information on alternative preparatory programs offered by the institute. Option D. Encourage the student to submit their application with their current transcripts, and assure them that the admissions committee will likely overlook the GPA deficiency, given their strong extracurricular profile. The correct answer is B. Advise the student that while their current GPA does not meet the minimum requirement, they should still apply and highlight their extracurricular achievements in their personal statement, as the admissions committee may consider exceptional circumstances. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the desire to assist a prospective student and the strict adherence to the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute's admission guidelines. The Institute's regulatory framework, as outlined in its entrance exam guidelines, mandates a specific process for evaluating applications, emphasizing objective assessment of academic merit and adherence to stated criteria. Misrepresenting information or creating a false impression of eligibility, even with good intentions, undermines the integrity of the admissions process and violates the principles of fairness and transparency expected of all institute personnel. The correct approach involves a thorough and honest assessment of the applicant's qualifications against the published entrance exam requirements. This means clearly communicating to the applicant the specific criteria they must meet and the available pathways for admission, without offering preferential treatment or making unsubstantiated promises. This approach is ethically sound and legally compliant with the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute's entrance exam regulations, which prioritize objective evaluation and equitable opportunity for all candidates. It upholds the institute's reputation for academic rigor and fairness. An incorrect approach would be to provide the applicant with unofficial or misleading information about their chances of admission. This could involve suggesting that their current academic standing is sufficient when it clearly falls short of the stated requirements, or implying that special considerations will be made outside the established process. Such actions violate the Institute's guidelines by circumventing the established evaluation procedures and potentially creating a false sense of hope for the applicant. This erodes trust in the admission system and could lead to future disputes or challenges. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the applicant's query altogether. This fails to uphold the professional responsibility to provide accurate information and guidance within the scope of one's role, and it does not align with the Institute's commitment to supporting prospective students through the application process. Professionals in such situation should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes transparency, fairness, and adherence to established regulations. This involves 1. Understanding the specific rules and guidelines governing the situation. In this case, the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute's entrance exam regulations. 2. Objectively assessing the facts presented, the applicant's current academic profile. 3. Communicating clearly and honestly, providing accurate information about requirements and available options. 4. Avoiding any actions that could be perceived as preferential treatment or a misrepresentation of facts. 5. Seeking clarification from supervisors or relevant departments if the situation is ambiguous or falls outside of established procedures. Question 3. Upon reviewing the application of a prospective student for the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute, an admissions committee member notices that the applicant's academic records, while meeting the minimum requirements, are not as strong as those of many other candidates. However, the applicant's personal essay is exceptionally compelling, detailing significant personal challenges overcome and demonstrating a unique perspective that could enrich the student body. Committee member is aware that the institute is aiming to increase diversity in its incoming class. Considering the institute's commitment to academic rigor and its stated goal of fostering a diverse and inclusive learning environment, what is the most appropriate course of action for the committee member? Option A. Recommend rejecting the applicant due to academic records not being among the strongest, prioritizing academic merit above all other considerations. Option B. Vote to admit the applicant, focusing solely on the strength of the personal essay and the diversity initiative, without explicitly discussing the applicant's academic record in relation to the minimum requirements. Option C. Advocate for the applicant's admission based on the compelling personal essay and the potential contribution to diversity, while ensuring that the applicant's academic record is still acknowledged as meeting the minimum threshold. Option D. Suggest admitting the applicant on a probationary status, requiring them to achieve a certain GPA in their first semester to remain enrolled. The correct answer is C. Advocate for the applicant's admission based on the compelling personal essay and the potential contribution to diversity, while ensuring that the applicant's academic record is still acknowledged as meeting the minimum threshold. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between academic integrity and the pressure to achieve positive outcomes for the institute. The admissions committee member must navigate the ethical imperative of fair and objective evaluation against potential institutional pressures or personal biases. Careful judgment is required to uphold the principles of meritocracy and prevent undue influence on the admissions process. The correct approach involves a thorough and impartial review of all applicant materials, adhering strictly to the established admissions criteria and procedures of the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute. This ensures that decisions are based on objective qualifications and potential, aligning with the institute's commitment to academic excellence and fairness. This approach is ethically sound and professionally responsible, as it prioritizes transparency, equity, and the integrity of the admissions process, which are fundamental to any reputable educational institution. An incorrect approach would be to allow personal opinions or external pressures to influence the evaluation of an applicant. This could manifest as favoring an applicant based on a personal connection or a perceived need to meet certain enrollment targets, disregarding the applicant's actual qualifications or the institute's stated criteria. Such actions violate the ethical principles of impartiality and fairness, undermining the credibility of the admissions process and potentially admitting students who are not academically prepared, which is detrimental to both the student and the institute. Another incorrect approach would be to overlook discrepancies or weaknesses in an applicant's profile due to a desire to appear lenient or accommodating, without proper justification or adherence to established policies. This compromises the rigor of the evaluation and sets a dangerous precedent for future admissions. Professionals in such situation should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to established policies and ethical guidelines. This involves 1. Understanding and internalizing the institute's admissions policies and ethical codes. 2. Objectively assessing all information presented by applicants against these established criteria. 3. Recognizing and mitigating personal biases. 4. Consulting with colleagues or supervisors if faced with ambiguity or conflicting pressures. 5. Documenting the decision-making process to ensure transparency and accountability. Question 4. Risk assessment procedures indicate a potential for undue influence on the admissions committee regarding a specific applicant who has strong ties to a prominent local business that has recently made a significant donation to the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute. The committee member is aware of this connection and is being subtly encouraged by a senior administrator to ensure this applicant's favorable consideration. Which of the following approaches best upholds the integrity of the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute's admissions process? Option A. Focus on the applicant's potential future networking opportunities for the institute, giving them preferential treatment in the evaluation. Option B. Expedite the review process for this applicant, overlooking minor inconsistencies in their submitted documents to ensure their admission is secured quickly. Option C. Prioritize the applicant's admission due to their family's significant donation to the institute, believing this will foster continued institutional support. Option D. Conduct a thorough and impartial review of the applicant's academic record, extracurricular activities, and personal statement, evaluating them strictly against the published admission criteria for the chosen program, and documenting all assessment decisions transparently. The correct answer is D. Conduct a thorough and impartial review of the applicant's academic record, extracurricular activities, and personal statement, evaluating them strictly against the published admission criteria for the chosen program, and documenting all assessment decisions transparently. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between academic integrity and the pressure to achieve positive outcomes for the institute. The admissions committee member must navigate the ethical imperative to uphold fair and objective evaluation standards against potential institutional bias or a desire to meet enrollment targets. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the admissions process remains impartial and that all candidates are assessed based on merit, as stipulated by the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute's admission guidelines. The correct approach involves a thorough and unbiased review of all application materials, focusing solely on the established academic and personal criteria outlined in the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute's admission regulations. This approach is ethically sound and legally compliant because it adheres strictly to the Institute's stated admission policies, ensuring fairness and equal opportunity for all applicants. It prioritizes objective assessment over subjective influence or external pressures, thereby safeguarding the integrity of the admissions process and the reputation of the institute. An incorrect approach that involves prioritizing candidates based on perceived future contributions or potential connections to the institute's benefactors fails to adhere to the principle of merit-based selection. This violates the spirit and letter of the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute's admission guidelines, which are designed to ensure that admissions are based on academic achievement and suitability for the chosen program. Such a biased approach introduces unfairness and could lead to the admission of less qualified candidates, undermining the academic standards of the institute. Another incorrect approach, which involves overlooking minor discrepancies in an applicant's documentation to expedite their admission, also represents a significant ethical and regulatory failure. The Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute's admission regulations likely mandate accurate and complete documentation for all applicants. Failing to verify the completeness and accuracy of application materials compromises the integrity of the admissions process and could lead to the admission of unqualified individuals or create future administrative complications. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should begin with a clear understanding of the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute's admission policies and ethical codes. When faced with conflicting pressures or ambiguous situations, the professional should always refer back to these established guidelines. If uncertainty persists, seeking clarification from a supervisor or the relevant admissions oversight committee is a crucial step. The ultimate goal is to make decisions that are transparent, fair, and demonstrably in line with the institute's stated objectives and regulatory framework, prioritizing academic merit and ethical conduct above all else. Question 5. Risk assessment procedures indicate a significant philanthropic offer from a prominent technology corporation for the establishment of a new research lab at Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute. The corporation has expressed interest in the institute's computer science and engineering programs and has suggested that the lab's initial research focus should align with their current product development roadmap. The institute's leadership is considering this offer, recognizing the potential for advanced equipment and funding, but also acknowledging the need to maintain academic independence. Which of the following approaches best upholds the academic integrity and ethical standards of Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute in evaluating this philanthropic offer? Option A. Form an independent academic committee composed of faculty from relevant departments and external academic advisors to rigorously assess the proposed research lab's alignment with the institute's long-term academic goals, curriculum development, and pedagogical impact, while also evaluating potential conflicts of interest and establishing clear guidelines for donor engagement. Option B. Reject the donation outright due to the donor's industry affiliation and the suggestion to align research with their product development, as this inherently poses a conflict of interest that cannot be adequately managed. Option C. Delegate the decision-making solely to the institute's fundraising department to negotiate the terms of the donation, focusing primarily on maximizing the financial and material benefits for the institute. Option D. Accept the donation immediately to secure the advanced equipment and funding, as the prestige of the donor and the financial benefit are paramount for enhancing the institute's reputation and attracting future opportunities. Correct answer is A. Form an independent academic committee composed of faculty from relevant departments and external academic advisors to rigorously assess the proposed research lab's alignment with the institute's long-term academic goals, curriculum development, and pedagogical impact, while also evaluating potential conflicts of interest and establishing clear guidelines for donor engagement. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the institute's academic mission and the potential for external influence to compromise its integrity. The need for careful judgment arises from balancing the desire for enhanced educational resources with the imperative to maintain academic independence and avoid conflicts of interest. The correct approach involves a thorough, documented review process that prioritizes the academic merit and pedagogical value of the proposed donation. This aligns with the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute's guiding principles of academic excellence and ethical conduct, as outlined in its internal regulations concerning external funding and resource acquisition. Specifically, the Institute's policy on gifts and donations mandates an assessment of potential conflicts of interest and ensures that all contributions serve the primary educational objectives without imposing undue influence on curriculum or research. The proposed review by an independent academic committee, focusing on alignment with the Institute's strategic goals and curriculum, is the most appropriate method to uphold these principles. An incorrect approach would be to accept the donation solely based on the perceived prestige or financial benefit, without a rigorous academic evaluation. This fails to adhere to the Institute's internal regulations on resource acceptance, which require a demonstration that the donation directly supports and enhances the educational mission. Accepting the donation without due diligence risks compromising academic freedom and could lead to the perception of undue influence by the donor, undermining the Institute's reputation and the trust placed in it by students and faculty. Another incorrect approach would be to reject the donation outright due to the donor's industry affiliation, without exploring its potential academic benefits. While vigilance against conflicts of interest is crucial, a blanket rejection without assessment may deprive the Institute of valuable resources that could genuinely enrich its programs and research, provided appropriate safeguards are in place. This approach lacks the nuanced judgment required to differentiate between beneficial partnerships and genuine threats to academic integrity. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured, multi-stage evaluation. First, identify the potential benefits and risks associated with the proposed donation. Second, consult relevant internal policies and ethical guidelines of the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute. Third, engage relevant stakeholders, such as academic departments and ethics committees, to gather diverse perspectives. Fourth, conduct a thorough assessment of the donation's alignment with the Institute's academic mission and strategic objectives, with a particular focus on identifying and mitigating any potential conflicts of interest. Finally, document the entire decision-making process and the rationale for the final decision. Question 6. Examination of the data shows that a student in their final year at Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute has submitted a research paper that, while not directly plagiarizing any single source, heavily relies on paraphrasing and synthesizing information from a limited number of obscure academic journals without proper attribution for the overall conceptual framework and structure. The student supervisor, reviewing the paper, notes that the student's own contributions appear minimal, primarily consisting of rephrasing existing ideas. The Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute's examination regulations state that all submitted work must be the original creation of the student, reflecting their own understanding and analytical capabilities. There is no specific clause addressing the extent of paraphrasing or the synthesis of existing conceptual frameworks as a form of academic misconduct. Which of the following actions best upholds the academic integrity of Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute? Option A. Advise the student to make minor edits to improve the flow of the paper without addressing the core issue of original contribution. Option B. Report the student to the examination board for potential disciplinary action based on a subjective assessment of the student's effort. Option C. Approve the paper as submitted, as there is no explicit regulation prohibiting the extensive paraphrasing and synthesis of existing conceptual frameworks. Option D. Recommend the student for a failing grade on the paper due to a violation of the principle of original creation, initiating a formal academic integrity review process. The correct answer is D. Recommend the student for a failing grade on the paper due to a violation of the principle of original creation, initiating a formal academic integrity review process. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the institute's academic integrity policies and the potential for a student to exploit a loophole for personal gain. The pressure to maintain academic standards while also ensuring fair assessment requires careful judgment. The core of the challenge lies in interpreting the spirit of the regulations versus their literal application, and the ethical responsibility to uphold the integrity of the examination process. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute's examination regulations, specifically focusing on clauses related to academic misconduct, plagiarism, and the definition of original work. This approach prioritizes adherence to the established rules and the ethical imperative to prevent unfair advantage. It recognizes that even if a student's actions are not explicitly forbidden by a single clause, they may violate the overarching principles of academic honesty. The justification lies in the Institute's commitment to fostering an environment of genuine learning and fair competition, which is undermined by any form of academic dishonesty, however subtly executed. An incorrect approach would be to dismiss the student's submission solely based on the absence of a direct prohibition in the regulations. This fails to acknowledge the broader ethical implications and the Institute's responsibility to maintain academic integrity. Represents a narrow, literal interpretation that could lead to the acceptance of work that is not genuinely the student's own, thereby devaluing the qualifications awarded by the Institute. Another incorrect approach would be to immediately penalize the student without a formal investigation or consultation with the relevant academic integrity committee. This bypasses established procedures and could lead to an unjust outcome for the student. It violates principles of due process and fairness. A third incorrect approach would be to ignore the situation entirely, assuming that if it's not explicitly against the rules, it's permissible. This abdication of responsibility allows for potential breaches of academic integrity to go unchecked, eroding the Institute's reputation and the value of its degrees. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding the relevant regulations thoroughly. 2. Identifying potential conflicts or ambiguities. 3. Consulting with appropriate academic authorities or committees responsible for academic integrity. 4. Gathering all necessary information and evidence. 5. Applying a reasoned judgment that upholds the spirit and letter of the regulations, prioritizing academic integrity and fairness. 6. Following established procedures for addressing academic misconduct. Question 7. Assessment of how an admissions committee member at the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute should respond to a student's email requesting a postponement of their entrance examination due to a sudden family emergency, citing the Institute's examination regulations as the primary guide for their decision. Option A. Review the student's request against the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute's official examination regulations and policies regarding postponements in special circumstances, documenting the review and decision. Option B. Advise the student to contact the Institute's student support services for assistance without directly addressing the examination postponement request. Option C. Inform the student that postponements are not permitted under any circumstances without further investigation. Option D. Grant the postponement immediately based on the student's explanation of a family emergency as a gesture of goodwill. The correct answer is A. Review the student's request against the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute's official examination regulations and policies regarding postponements in special circumstances, documenting the review and decision. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's personal circumstances and the academic integrity policies of the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute. The need for careful judgment arises from balancing empathy for the student's situation with the Institute's commitment to fair and equitable assessment for all candidates. The entrance exam is a critical gateway, and any deviation from established procedures could undermine its validity and fairness. The correct approach involves a thorough and documented review of the student's request against the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institutes, stated examination regulations, and policies regarding special accommodations. This approach is professionally sound because it adheres strictly to the established framework designed to ensure fairness and transparency in the entrance examination process. The Institute's regulations, as the governing framework, provide the definitive criteria for evaluating such requests. Any deviation without explicit authorization or a clear procedural pathway outlined in these regulations would be a breach of academic governance. This approach prioritizes adherence to the rule of law and institutional policy, which are paramount in maintaining the integrity of the entrance examination. An incorrect approach would be to grant the accommodation based solely on the student's personal narrative without verifying if it aligns with the institute's documented criteria for special circumstances. This fails to uphold the principle of equal treatment, as other students in similar, albeit unexpressed, situations might not receive the same consideration. It also bypasses the established procedural safeguards, potentially opening the door to subjective decision-making and undermining the credibility of the examination process. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the request outright without a formal review process. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and empathy, failing to consider that the student's circumstances might indeed warrant a legitimate accommodation, as defined by the institute's policies. Such an action could lead to an unfair exclusion of a potentially qualified candidate and damage the institute's reputation for fairness. A further incorrect approach would be to consult with colleagues informally for an opinion, without following the official channels for seeking guidance or approval. While collaboration can be valuable, relying on informal advice for a decision with significant implications for an applicant's future and for the integrity of the examination is unprofessional and lacks the necessary accountability. Decisions regarding examination accommodations must be grounded in established policy and documented procedures. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve 1. Identifying the core issue, a student requesting an exception to standard examination procedures due to personal circumstances. 2. Consulting the governing framework, meticulously reviewing the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute's entrance examination regulations and any associated policies on special accommodations. 3. Applying the criteria, objectively assessing the student's request against the specific requirements and conditions outlined in the regulations. 4. Documenting the process, maintaining a clear record of the request, the review undertaken, the decision made, and the justification based on the regulations. 5. Seeking formal approval if necessary, if the regulations allow for discretion or require higher-level approval for certain accommodations. Following those prescribed steps. Question 8. Which approach would be most appropriate for an applicant preparing for the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute entrance exam who is seeking to maximize their chances of success while strictly adhering to the Institute's academic integrity standards? Option A. Collaborating with other applicants to share answers and strategies during practice sessions, with the understanding that this collaboration will continue during the actual exam. Option B. Diligently studying the official syllabus and past examination papers provided by Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute, and seeking clarification on any doubts from the Institute's admissions department. Option C. Relying solely on general academic knowledge acquired during previous schooling, without consulting any specific preparation materials or guidelines from Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute. Option D. Purchasing guaranteed success. Study guides and practice tests from third-party websites that claim to have insider information on the exam. The correct answer is B. Diligently studying the official syllabus and past examination papers provided by Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute, and seeking clarification on any doubts from the Institute's admissions department. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic advancement and the Institute's commitment to academic integrity and fair assessment. The pressure to perform well in entrance exams, especially for prestigious institutions like Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute, can lead individuals to consider unethical shortcuts. Navigating this requires a strong understanding of the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute's specific examination regulations and ethical guidelines, which are designed to ensure a level playing field for all applicants. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute's official examination regulations and academic integrity policies. This approach is correct because it directly addresses the problem within the established legal and ethical framework of the institution. By consulting these official documents, the applicant can understand the permissible methods for preparing for the exam, the consequences of academic misconduct, and the resources available for legitimate academic support. This adheres to the principle of academic honesty, a cornerstone of educational institutions, and respects the integrity of the examination process as defined by Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute. An incorrect approach would be to seek out or utilize unauthorized study materials or tips from unofficial sources. This is ethically problematic as it bypasses the intended assessment process and potentially provides an unfair advantage, violating the spirit of fair competition. It also carries significant regulatory risk, as Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute's regulations likely prohibit the use of such materials, leading to disqualification or other disciplinary actions. Another incorrect approach would be to engage in any form of collusion or unauthorized assistance during the examination period. This is a direct violation of academic integrity rules and is universally condemned by educational institutions. Such actions undermine the validity of the examination and demonstrate a lack of personal integrity, which would be grounds for immediate rejection of the application by Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute. A further incorrect approach would be to ignore the examination guidelines altogether and rely solely on prior knowledge without specific preparation tailored to the exam's format and content as outlined by Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute. While prior knowledge is valuable, entrance exams are designed to assess specific competencies and knowledge relevant to the Institute's programs. Failing to understand and prepare according to the Institute's directives can lead to underperformance, not due to dishonesty, but due to a lack of adherence to the prescribed assessment parameters. A professional decision-making process in such situations should begin with a clear understanding of the governing regulations and ethical standards. Professionals should always prioritize adherence to established rules and guidelines. When faced with ambiguity or pressure, the first step is always to consult official documentation. If clarification is still needed, seeking guidance from authorized personnel within the institution, such as the admissions office or academic integrity board, is the appropriate course of action. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are informed, ethical, and compliant with the institution's framework. Question 9. Implementation of a new standardized entrance examination at Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute is underway. During the final review of question papers, a senior faculty member, who also happens to be a distant relative of a prominent applicant, approaches the examination committee chair. Faculty member expresses concern that the applicant might find a particular section too challenging and subtly suggests that some minor adjustments could be made to ensure a fairer assessment of their potential. The examination committee chair must decide how to respond to this request, ensuring adherence to the Institute's examination regulations and ethical standards. Option A. Agree to review the specific section with the faculty member and make minor, undisclosed modifications to the questions to ease the perceived difficulty for the applicant. Option B. Lightly but firmly decline the request, explaining that all examination materials are finalized and subject to strict protocol to ensure fairness and impartiality for all candidates, and that any deviation would compromise the integrity of the entrance process. Option C. Inform the faculty member that, while direct adjustments are not possible, the applicant will be given extra time during the examination to complete that particular section. Option D. Suggest that the faculty member speak directly with the applicant to advise them on how to best prepare for that specific section of the exam. The correct answer is B. Politely but firmly decline the request, explaining that all examination materials are finalized and subject to strict protocols to ensure fairness and impartiality for all candidates, and that any deviation would compromise the integrity of the entrance process. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between academic integrity and the pressure to achieve positive outcomes, particularly in the context of an entrance examination for a reputable institution like Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute. The ethical imperative is to ensure a fair and unbiased assessment process, safeguarding the credibility of the institute's admissions. Careful judgment is required to navigate situations where external influences might compromise this integrity. The correct approach involves a steadfast commitment to the established examination protocols and a refusal to deviate from them, even under pressure. This upholds the principles of fairness, transparency, and meritocracy that are fundamental to any academic selection process. Specifically, adhering to the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute's examination guidelines, which are designed to ensure standardized and objective evaluation, is paramount. This approach is ethically justified by the institute's commitment to academic excellence and its responsibility to select candidates based on their genuine abilities and knowledge, free from undue influence. An incorrect approach that involves accommodating a request for preferential treatment, such as providing advance information about exam content, directly violates the principles of academic integrity and fairness. This action would undermine the validity of the examination and create an inequitable playing field for other applicants. Ethically, it constitutes a breach of trust and a dereliction of duty to uphold the institute's standards. Another incorrect approach, such as subtly altering the difficulty of questions for a specific candidate, also compromises the integrity of the assessment. This introduces bias and prevents a true comparison of candidates' abilities. It is ethically unacceptable as it manipulates the evaluation process for personal or external gain, thereby devaluing the qualifications of all applicants. A further incorrect approach, such as overlooking minor irregularities in a candidate's submission due to a personal connection, demonstrates a failure to apply the examination rules consistently. This selective enforcement of regulations erodes the credibility of the examination process and can lead to the admission of unqualified individuals, ultimately harming the academic environment of the institute. The professional decision-making process in such situations should begin with a clear understanding of the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute's examination regulations and ethical codes. When faced with a request or situation that appears to compromise these standards, the professional must first identify the potential ethical or regulatory conflict. The next step is to consult the relevant guidelines and policies. If the situation remains ambiguous or if pressure is applied, escalating the matter to a supervisor or the designated examination oversight committee is crucial. Maintaining detailed records of all interactions and decisions is also a vital part of professional due diligence. The ultimate goal is to ensure that the examination process remains fair, objective, and in strict accordance with the institute's established framework. Question 10. Risk assessment procedures indicate a potential for increased student requests for assessment extensions due to unforeseen personal circumstances. A student approaches an instructor shortly before a major examination, citing significant family distress and requesting an immediate, indefinite extension. The instructor is aware of the student's generally good academic standing, but has no formal policy for handling such requests outside of pre-approved medical or documented emergencies. Which of the following represents the most appropriate initial response for the instructor, adhering strictly to the principles of fairness, academic integrity, and established institutional procedures as outlined by the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute's guidelines? Option A. Acknowledging the student's distress, explaining the institute's formal process for requesting extensions, and advising the student to immediately contact the student support services for guidance and to initiate the official request procedure. Option B. Offering a verbal short-term extension of 24 hours to allow the student time to gather documentation without specifying the exact new examination date. Option C. Granting an immediate, indefinite extension to the student while assuring them that the institute supports its students, and then formally documenting the situation later. Option D. Informing the student that extensions are only granted for pre-approved medical or documented emergencies and that their request cannot be accommodated at this time. The correct answer is C. Granting an immediate, indefinite extension to the student while assuring them that the institute supports its students, and then formally documenting the situation later. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the institute's commitment to academic integrity with the need to support students facing personal difficulties. The pressure to maintain high academic standards must be weighed against the ethical obligation to provide a supportive learning environment. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any accommodations made are fair, transparent, and do not compromise the integrity of the assessment process. The correct approach involves a structured, documented process that prioritizes fairness and adherence to established institute policies. This approach is right because it ensures that all students are treated equitably and that decisions are based on objective criteria and established procedures, as mandated by the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute's academic regulations, specifically, sections pertaining to student support and assessment integrity. This method upholds the principle of academic honesty by ensuring that assessments accurately reflect a student's own knowledge and abilities, while also acknowledging and addressing legitimate student welfare concerns through appropriate channels. An incorrect approach that involves immediate, informal granting of extensions without proper documentation or consideration of policy failures to uphold the institute's commitment to fair and consistent assessment. This bypasses established procedures, potentially creating a precedent for preferential treatment and undermining the credibility of the examination process. It also fails to address the root cause of the student's difficulties, which might require more comprehensive support than a simple extension. Another incorrect approach, which is to dismiss the student's request outright without any form of inquiry or consideration, is ethically problematic. While upholding academic standards is crucial, a complete lack of empathy or willingness to explore potential solutions can be detrimental to student welfare and the institute's reputation. This approach neglects the human element and the potential for unforeseen circumstances to impact student performance, failing to align with the supportive ethos expected of an educational institution. A further incorrect approach, which is to grant an extension, but without clearly defining the new submission deadline or the conditions under which it is granted, introduces ambiguity and potential for future disputes. This lack of clarity can lead to misunderstandings and further complications, failing to provide a definitive resolution and potentially compromising the fairness of the assessment for other students. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding the specific institute policies and regulations governing extensions and student support. 2. Gathering all relevant information from the student, including the nature of their difficulties and any supporting documentation. 3. Consulting with relevant departments or individuals, e.g., student welfare officers, academic advisors, if necessary. 4. Making a decision that is consistent with policy, fair to all students, and supportive of the student's welfare. 5. Documenting the decision and the rationale behind it. Question 11. During the evaluation of an applicant for admission to the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute, it is discovered that the applicant is the nephew of a senior faculty member in the same department. The applicant's examination scores and submitted credentials are strong, meeting the general admission requirements. Faculty member has not directly intervened in the application process, but has previously expressed pride in their nephew's academic aspirations to colleagues. What is the most appropriate course of action for the admissions committee? Option A. Advise the applicant to withdraw their application to avoid any appearance of impropriety, suggesting they reapply in a future cycle when the faculty member is no longer affiliated with the department. Option B. Inform the faculty member that their nephew's application will be subject to heightened scrutiny due to the familial connection and request that the faculty member recuse themselves from any discussions or decisions related to this specific application. Option C. Immediately disqualify the applicant from consideration due to the potential for perceived or actual bias stemming from the familial relationship, regardless of the applicant's qualifications. Option D. Proceed with the evaluation of the applicant based solely on their academic merit and adherence to the established admission criteria, ensuring all documentation and decision-making processes are transparent and auditable, while discreetly noting the familial relationship for internal awareness. The correct answer is D. Proceed with the evaluation of the applicant based solely on their academic merit and adherence to the established admission criteria, ensuring all documentation and decision-making processes are transparent and auditable, while discreetly noting the familial relationship for internal awareness. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the institute's academic integrity policies and the potential for external influence to compromise fair evaluation. The applicant's family connection introduces a risk of bias, requiring careful navigation to uphold the principles of meritocracy and equal opportunity, which are foundational to the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute's admission process. The correct approach involves a transparent and objective assessment process, strictly adhering to the established admission criteria and guidelines. This means evaluating the applicant solely on their academic merit, qualifications, and performance in the entrance examination, without any consideration of their familial relationship to a faculty member. This aligns with the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute's commitment to fair and impartial admissions, as outlined in its academic integrity policy and student admissions regulations, which explicitly prohibit favoritism and mandate that all applicants be judged against the same objective standards. An incorrect approach would be to grant preferential treatment or to allow the familial connection to influence the evaluation in any way. This would violate the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute's academic integrity policy by undermining the principle of equal opportunity and potentially leading to an unfair admission decision. Furthermore, it could contravene the Institute's Code of Conduct for faculty and staff, which mandates professional impartiality and the avoidance of conflicts of interest. Another incorrect approach would be to disqualify the applicant solely based on the familial relationship without any evidence of actual bias or undue influence. This would be an overreaction and could be seen as discriminatory, failing to uphold the principle of evaluating candidates on their merits. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to established policies and ethical principles. This involves 1. Identifying the potential conflict of interest, 2. Consulting relevant institutional policies, e.g., academic integrity policy, code of conduct, admissions regulations, 3. Ensuring all evaluation processes are objective, transparent, and documented. 4. Seeking guidance from appropriate authorities, e.g., admissions committee, ethics officer, if ambiguity exists. 5. Maintaining strict impartiality throughout the evaluation. Question 12. The evaluation methodology shows a candidate's submitted essay for the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute entrance exam contains passages that bear a striking resemblance to publicly available online resources, raising concerns about potential plagiarism. The admissions committee must decide how to proceed. Option A. Accept the essay as is, assuming the candidate may have been influenced by external sources, but deeming the resemblance coincidental given the essay's otherwise strong arguments. Option B. Prioritize processing other applications to meet departmental quotas and flag the essay for a cursory review at a later, less busy time. Option C. Conduct a detailed plagiarism check using specialized software and, if confirmed, disqualify the candidate in accordance with the Institute's academic integrity policy. Option D. Forward the essay to the candidate for a self-assessment of their research process and ask them to provide citations for the similar passages, without further independent verification. The correct answer is C. Conduct a detailed plagiarism check using specialized software and, if confirmed, disqualify the candidate in accordance with the Institute's academic integrity policy. Explanation. This scenario presents a challenge in academic integrity and fair assessment, requiring careful judgment to uphold the standards of the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute. The core issue is the potential for plagiarism, which undermines the validity of the entrance exam and the principle of equal opportunity for all applicants. The Institute's regulatory framework, as implied by the entrance exam context, prioritizes academic honesty and the accurate evaluation of a candidate's own knowledge and skills. The correct approach involves a thorough, independent review of the submitted work, focusing on identifying any evidence of unoriginal content. This aligns with the Institute's implied commitment to academic integrity, ensuring that all candidates are assessed based on their own merit. The regulatory framework for academic institutions, including entrance exams, universally mandates that submitted work must be the original creation of the applicant. Any deviation from this principle constitutes a breach of academic honesty, which can lead to disqualification and damage the reputation of the institution. An approach that overlooks potential plagiarism due to time constraints or a desire to maintain high throughput fails to uphold the Institute's standards. This is a direct violation of academic integrity principles, as it allows for unfair advantage and compromises the validity of the assessment. Similarly, an approach that dismisses concerns about originality without proper investigation is negligent and undermines the fairness of the selection process. It suggests a lack of due diligence in ensuring that the exam results accurately reflect the candidate's abilities. Furthermore, an approach that focuses solely on the quantity of work submitted, rather than its originality and quality, misinterprets the purpose of an entrance examination, which is to gauge individual competence. Professionals in academic admissions should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes fairness, integrity, and adherence to institutional regulations. This involves a systematic review process that includes checks for originality, a commitment to thorough investigation of any suspected irregularities, and a clear understanding of the consequences for academic misconduct. When faced with potential issues, the process should involve consulting relevant institutional policies and, if necessary, seeking guidance from academic integrity committees or senior administrators. Question 13. Performance analysis shows a significant decline in student retention rates for the past 2 academic years, alongside a decrease in the number of successful research publications. The Institute's leadership is preparing its annual report for prospective students and the wider academic community. Which of the following actions best aligns with the ethical and regulatory expectations for reporting institutional performance? Option A. Emphasize the positive trends in student enrollment for new programs and highlight recent faculty awards, while briefly mentioning retention challenges as a temporary issue being addressed. Option B. Focus solely on the positive aspects of the Institute's offerings and reputation, omitting any mention of declining performance metrics to maintain a strong public image. Option C. Present a comprehensive overview of all performance metrics, including the decline in retention and research output, and outline a detailed strategic plan for improvement with specific targets and timelines. Option D. Attribute the decline in retention and research to external economic factors and a general shift in student interests, without detailing specific internal strategies for improvement. The correct answer is A. Emphasize the positive trends in student enrollment for new programs and highlight recent faculty awards, while briefly mentioning retention challenges as a temporary issue being addressed. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the desire to present a positive institutional image and the ethical obligation to accurately report performance data. The Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute entrance exam regulations, while not explicitly detailed here, would typically mandate transparency and integrity in all institutional reporting. Misrepresenting data, even with the intention of boosting morale or attracting future applicants, constitutes a breach of trust and potentially violates academic integrity principles. The correct approach involves a commitment to factual reporting and a proactive strategy for addressing underperformance. This means acknowledging the areas where the institute is falling short, as indicated by the performance analysis, and developing concrete, evidence-based plans for improvement. This aligns with the ethical imperative of honesty and the regulatory expectation of responsible institutional management. By focusing on genuine improvement rather than superficial presentation, the Institute upholds its credibility and fosters a culture of continuous development. An incorrect approach would be to selectively highlight positive data while downplaying or omitting negative trends. This misrepresents the Institute's true standing and can mislead stakeholders, including prospective students, faculty, and governing bodies. Such an action violates the principle of transparency and can lead to a loss of confidence. Another incorrect approach would be to attribute underperformance solely to external factors without acknowledging any internal areas for improvement. While external factors can play a role, a responsible institution must also critically examine its own strategies and operations. This failure to self-assess is a significant ethical and professional lapse. The professional decision-making process in such a situation should begin with a thorough and unbiased review of all available performance data. This should be followed by an honest assessment of the root causes of any underperformance. The next step is to develop a strategic plan that addresses these causes, setting realistic goals and measurable outcomes. Communication of both challenges and improvement plans should be transparent and honest with relevant stakeholders. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are grounded in reality and guided by ethical principles. Question 14. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a prominent alumnus has strongly recommended a candidate for admission to the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute, highlighting the candidate's potential for future success and their family's long-standing connection to the institute. The candidate's academic record and entrance examination scores are borderline, falling slightly below the typical threshold for successful applicants. The admissions committee is deliberating on this application. Which of the following approaches best upholds the integrity of the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute's admission process? Option A. The committee prioritizes the alumnus's recommendation, granting the candidate preferential consideration and admitting them if they are deemed to have sufficient potential, even if their scores are below the standard cutoff. Option B. The committee overlooks minor inconsistencies in the candidate's academic transcripts and examination reports to accommodate the alumnus's strong endorsement, assuming these discrepancies are inconsequential. Option C. The committee dismisses the candidate's application without a full review, believing that the alumnus's recommendation is unsolicited and therefore not a legitimate factor to consider in the admission process. Option D. The committee thoroughly reviews the candidate's entire application package, objectively assessing their academic achievements and examination results against the established admission criteria, while acknowledging the alumnus's recommendation, but ensuring it does not override the documented qualifications. The correct answer is D. The committee thoroughly reviews the candidate's entire application package, objectively assessing their academic achievements and examination results against the established admission criteria, while acknowledging the alumnus's recommendation, but ensuring it does not override the documented qualifications. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between academic integrity and the pressure to achieve positive outcomes for the institute. The admissions committee is tasked with evaluating candidates fairly and objectively, adhering strictly to the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute's established admission criteria and guidelines. The challenge lies in resisting external pressures or personal biases that could compromise the integrity of the selection process. The correct approach involves a thorough and impartial review of all applicant materials against the defined admission criteria, prioritizing objective evidence and established procedures. This aligns with the core ethical principles of fairness, transparency, and meritocracy expected in academic admissions. Specifically, the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute's admission guidelines, as stipulated in the internal examination framework, mandate that all decisions be based solely on the documented academic record, entrance examination scores, and any supplementary assessment components outlined in the official prospectus. Any deviation from these documented criteria, such as considering anecdotal information or external influence, would violate these guidelines and compromise the integrity of the admissions process. An incorrect approach would be to allow the personal recommendation from a prominent alumnus to unduly influence the evaluation of a candidate, especially if that candidate does not fully meet the established academic or examination benchmarks. This introduces bias and undermines the principle of equal opportunity for all applicants. Such an action would contravene the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute's Code of Conduct for Admissions Committees, which explicitly prohibits preferential treatment based on non-academic factors or external endorsements. Another incorrect approach would be to overlook discrepancies in a candidate's application, such as inconsistencies in their academic transcripts, due to a desire to accommodate the alumnus's request. This failure to conduct due diligence and verify information directly violates the institute's commitment to academic rigor and the principle of admitting only qualified candidates. The Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute's internal audit procedures for admissions would flag such omissions as a serious breach of protocol. A further incorrect approach would be to dismiss the candidate's application outright without a thorough review, simply because the alumnus's recommendation was not explicitly requested or solicited. While not as egregious as accepting undue influence, this still represents a failure to follow the prescribed evaluation process, which requires a comprehensive assessment of every applicant's qualifications against the stated criteria. The Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute's admission policy emphasizes a holistic review process, not a selective one based on the perceived importance of external endorsements. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding and strict adherence to the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute's admission policies, guidelines, and ethical codes. When faced with conflicting pressures or ambiguous situations, committee members should 1. Refer to the official admission criteria and procedural documents. 2. Document all evaluations and decisions meticulously. 3. Seek clarification from the admissions committee chair or the relevant administrative body if any doubt arises regarding the interpretation or application of rules. 4. Prioritize objectivity and fairness above all else, ensuring that every candidate is assessed on their own merits according to the established framework. Question 15. Risk assessment procedures indicate a potential for undue influence in the upcoming admissions cycle for the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute. A member of the admissions committee has a close personal acquaintance applying for a highly competitive program. This applicant has a strong academic record, but also has connections that could potentially bring positive publicity to the institute if admitted. Committee member is aware of this potential benefit and their personal relationship with the applicant. What is the most ethically and regulatorily sound approach for this committee member to take? Option A. Conduct a thorough and objective evaluation of the applicant's qualifications against all established admission criteria, documenting the process meticulously, and disclosing the personal acquaintance to the committee chair to ensure transparency and allow for appropriate oversight. Option B. Abstain from participating in the evaluation and decision-making process for this specific applicant, formally documenting the reason for recusal due to a potential conflict of interest. Option C. Proceed with the evaluation as usual, assuming their professional integrity will prevent personal bias from affecting the decision, and not disclose the personal acquaintance to avoid unnecessary complications. Option D. Advocate for the applicant's admission to other committee members, highlighting their strong academic record and the potential positive publicity they could bring to the institute, while downplaying the personal acquaintance. The correct answer is A. Conduct a thorough and objective evaluation of the applicant's qualifications against all established admission criteria, documenting the process meticulously, and disclosing the personal acquaintance to the committee chair to ensure transparency and allow for appropriate oversight. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between academic integrity and the pressure to achieve positive outcomes for the institute. The admissions committee member must navigate the ethical imperative to uphold fair and objective evaluation standards against potential institutional bias or external influence. The Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute Entrance Exam Regulations, specifically the Code of Conduct for Admissions Committees and the Principles of Fair Evaluation, mandate impartiality and the avoidance of personal bias or undue influence in candidate assessment. The correct approach involves a rigorous, evidence-based evaluation of the applicant's qualifications against established criteria, irrespective of any personal connection or perceived institutional benefit. This aligns with the regulatory requirement for objective assessment and ensures that all candidates are treated equitably. The principles of fair evaluation explicitly state that personal relationships or potential institutional advantages should not sway the admissions decision. An incorrect approach would be to allow the personal acquaintance or the potential for positive publicity to influence the evaluation. This violates the Code of Conduct for Admissions Committees by introducing bias and compromising the integrity of the admissions process. Similarly, prioritizing the applicant's potential to enhance the institute's reputation over their actual academic merit would contravene the principles of fair evaluation, which emphasize meritocracy and objective assessment. Another incorrect approach would be to delegate the decision-making entirely to another committee member without active, independent review, as this shirks the responsibility of ensuring fair evaluation and could lead to a decision not based on the applicant's true qualifications. Professionals in such situations should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes ethical conduct and regulatory compliance. This involves 1. Identifying potential conflicts of interest. 2. Consulting relevant institutional policies and ethical guidelines. 3. Seeking objective evidence to support any decision. 4. Maintaining detailed records of the evaluation process. 5. If necessary, recusing oneself from the decision-making process if a conflict cannot be adequately managed. Question 16. Risk assessment procedures indicate a potential for increased student stress during examination periods, leading to requests for academic concessions. A student, MS. Anya Sharma, has approached her instructor just days before a major final examination, citing severe personal family issues that have significantly impacted her ability to prepare. She is requesting an extension for her examination submission. The instructor is aware of MS. Sharma's generally good academic standing, but has no formal documentation of her family situation. Which of the following represents the most appropriate course of action for the instructor, adhering strictly to the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute's regulatory framework? Option A. Grant MS. Sharma an immediate undocumented extension for the examination submission, based on her stated distress and good academic record. Option B. Advise MS. Sharma to formally submit a request for academic concession through the Institute's designated student support services, providing any supporting documentation as per the academic regulations, and inform her that a decision will be made based on policy. Option C. Offer MS. Sharma a reduced scope for the examination to accommodate her current difficulties, without requiring any formal process or documentation. Option D. Dismiss MS. Sharma's request, stating that all students must adhere to the examination schedule regardless of personal circumstances, and that extensions are not permitted. Correct answer is A. Grant MS. Sharma an immediate, undocumented extension for the examination submission, based on her stated distress and good academic record. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the institute's commitment to academic integrity with the need to support students facing personal difficulties. The pressure to maintain high academic standards must be weighed against the ethical obligation to provide a supportive learning environment. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any accommodations made are fair, transparent, and do not compromise the integrity of the assessment process. The correct approach involves a structured, documented process that prioritizes fairness and adherence to established academic regulations. This approach is right because it ensures that any decision regarding academic concessions is based on objective criteria and institutional policy, thereby upholding the principles of academic honesty and equal opportunity for all students. Specifically, it aligns with the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute's stated commitment to fair assessment practices and student welfare, as outlined in its academic regulations and student support guidelines. This method provides a clear audit trail and ensures consistency in decision-making. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate student distress without proper documentation or adherence to policy fails to uphold academic integrity. This is ethically unacceptable, as it could set a precedent for unfair advantages and undermine the credibility of the institute's assessments. It violates the principle of equitable treatment for all students. Another incorrect approach that involves bypassing established procedures to grant an immediate, undocumented concession is also professionally unsound. This creates a lack of transparency and accountability, potentially leading to future disputes and a perception of favoritism. It disregards the importance of due process and institutional governance. A third incorrect approach that involves dismissing the student's concerns without exploring potential accommodations or support mechanisms is ethically deficient. This demonstrates a lack of empathy and fails to meet the institute's responsibility to support its students, potentially exacerbating the students' difficulties and negatively impacting their academic performance and well-being. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Acknowledging the student's situation and demonstrating empathy. 2. Referring to the relevant institutional policies and guidelines, e.g., academic regulations, student support guidelines. 3. Gathering necessary information and documentation to assess the situation objectively. 4. Exploring all available and appropriate accommodations or support mechanisms in accordance with policy. 5. Communicating the decision and the rationale clearly to the student. 6. Documenting the entire process and the final decision. Question 17. The monitoring system demonstrates a statistically significant deviation in the engagement metrics for a cohort of prospective students during the final week of the application period, with a notable drop in activity compared to previous weeks and other cohorts. This anomaly could indicate several underlying issues. Which of the following represents the most appropriate initial response for the admissions committee of the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute? Option A. Report the anomaly as a potential indicator of disinterest from the cohort and suggest a reduction in recruitment efforts for similar demographic profiles in future application cycles. Option B. Assume the anomaly is a technical glitch within the monitoring system and proceed with standard application processing without further investigation into the specific cohort's engagement data. Option C. Immediately flag the cohort for potential irregularities and recommend a review of their application completeness and eligibility based on the observed drop in engagement. Option D. Initiate a detailed review of the anomaly, cross-referencing engagement data with application submission rates, demographic information, and feedback channels to identify potential causes before considering any further action. Correct answer is D. Initiate a detailed review of the anomaly, cross-referencing engagement data with application submission rates, demographic information, and feedback channels to identify potential causes before considering any further action. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the potential for misinterpreting data from the monitoring system, which could lead to incorrect academic interventions or policy decisions. The Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute entrance exam regulations require a nuanced understanding of student performance indicators and the ethical considerations surrounding their interpretation. Careful judgment is essential to ensure that any actions taken are fair, evidence-based, and aligned with the Institute's commitment to student development and academic integrity. The correct approach involves a comprehensive review of the monitoring system's data, cross-referencing it with multiple performance metrics, and considering qualitative factors. This approach is justified by the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute's guidelines on student assessment, which emphasize a holistic evaluation. Specifically, these guidelines mandate that decisions impacting students must be based on a broad spectrum of evidence, not solely on isolated data points. Ethical considerations also dictate that students should not be penalized or have opportunities limited based on potentially incomplete or misleading information. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the flagged anomaly without further investigation fails to adhere to the Institute's comprehensive assessment principles. This could lead to unfair judgments about student capabilities or program effectiveness. Another incorrect approach that immediately escalates the issue to disciplinary action without due diligence violates the principle of natural justice and the Institute's procedures for addressing performance concerns, which typically involve a tiered approach of review and support before punitive measures. A third incorrect approach that dismisses the anomaly as a system error without verifying its validity overlooks the potential for genuine insights into student learning or systemic issues, thereby failing to uphold the Institute's commitment to continuous improvement and data-informed decision-making. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Data verification. Always confirm the accuracy and completeness of the data. 2. Contextualization. Understand the broader context of the data, considering other relevant information. 3. Consultation. Seek input from relevant stakeholders or subject matter experts. 4. Ethical review. Assess the potential impact of any decision on students and the Institute's reputation. 5. Procedural adherence. Follow established institutional policies and guidelines. Question 18. Cost-benefit analysis shows that a new AI-powered grading system for essays could significantly reduce faculty workload and grading turnaround time at the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute. However, concerns have been raised regarding the system's potential for algorithmic bias and the privacy of student submissions. Considering the Institute's commitment to academic integrity and student welfare, which of the following represents the most responsible course of action? Option A. Implement the AI grading system immediately to realize the cost savings and efficiency gains, with a plan to address any identified issues retrospectively. Option B. Reject the AI grading system outright due to the potential for bias and privacy concerns, opting to maintain the current manual grading process. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive ethical review and pilot test of the AI system, involving faculty and student representatives, to assess its fairness, accuracy, and compliance with data privacy regulations before full adoption. Option D. Utilize the AI grading system for preliminary feedback only, with final grades still determined solely by human instructors, without a formal review of the AI's underlying algorithms. The correct answer is A. Implement the AI grading system immediately to realize the cost savings and efficiency gains, with a plan to address any identified issues retrospectively. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the perceived immediate benefits of a new technology and the potential long-term ethical and regulatory implications. The Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute, as an educational institution, has a duty to uphold academic integrity, student privacy, and compliance with any applicable educational technology regulations. The decision to implement a new AI-powered grading system requires careful consideration beyond mere efficiency gains. The correct approach involves a thorough due diligence process that prioritizes ethical considerations and regulatory compliance. This includes understanding the specific data privacy laws governing educational institutions in the relevant jurisdiction, assessing the AI's potential biases, ensuring transparency with students and faculty about its use, and establishing clear protocols for human oversight and appeal. This approach aligns with the principles of responsible innovation and safeguards the institution's reputation and the rights of its stakeholders. An incorrect approach would be to prioritize cost savings and efficiency without adequately addressing the ethical and regulatory dimensions. For instance, adopting the AI system solely based on its cost-benefit analysis without investigating its data handling practices would be a significant ethical failure. This could lead to breaches of student privacy, violating principles of data protection, and potentially contravening specific clauses within the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute's charter or any governing educational technology guidelines. Another incorrect approach would be to implement the system without informing students and faculty, thereby undermining trust and transparency, which are fundamental to an academic environment. This lack of transparency could also violate principles of informed consent if student data is being processed in ways they are not aware of. Professionals in such situations should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying all relevant stakeholders and their interests. This is followed by a comprehensive risk assessment that includes ethical, legal, and operational risks. The next step involves researching and understanding all applicable regulations and institutional policies. Finally, a decision should be made based on a balanced consideration of benefits, risks, and ethical obligations, with a preference for approaches that uphold integrity and protect individuals. Question 19. Investigation of a situation where the Director of Admissions at the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute instructs an examination administrator to adjust the scores of a cohort of applicants to ensure a higher acceptance rate, citing the need to improve the institute's perceived success. The administrator is aware that such an action would violate the institute's established examination conduct guidelines and academic integrity policy. Option A. Attempt to persuade the director to reconsider their request by highlighting the potential long-term damage to the institute's reputation if such practices were discovered. Option B. Ignore the director's request and continue with the examination process as planned, without reporting the incident. Option C. Refuse the director's request, document the instruction, and report the incident to the institute's Academic Integrity Committee as per the Academic Integrity Policy. Option D. Fulfill the director's request by subtly adjusting the scores to achieve the desired outcome without explicit documentation of the manipulation. The correct answer is C. Refuse the director's request, document the instruction, and report the incident to the institute's Academic Integrity Committee as per the Academic Integrity Policy. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between academic integrity and the pressure to achieve positive outcomes for the institute. The Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute entrance exam regulations, as stipulated in the institute's Academic Integrity Policy (APE) and the Examination Conduct Guidelines (EC), mandate strict adherence to fair and unbiased assessment practices. The director's request, while seemingly aimed at improving the institute's reputation, directly contravenes these regulations by seeking to manipulate the examination results. The correct approach involves upholding the integrity of the examination process by refusing to alter the results and by reporting the director's request through the appropriate channels as outlined in the AIP. This aligns with the ethical obligation of all examination personnel to ensure fairness, transparency, and accuracy in assessments. Specifically, the AIP emphasizes the prohibition of any form of result manipulation and mandates reporting mechanisms for breaches of academic integrity. Adhering to these guidelines protects the credibility of the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute and ensures that admission is based on genuine merit. An incorrect approach would be to comply with the director's request to artificially inflate scores. This action constitutes a direct violation of the ECG, which strictly prohibits any interference with examination results. Ethically, it undermines the principle of fairness and devalues the achievements of genuine candidates. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the request and take no action. This passive stance fails to address a clear breach of academic integrity and could be interpreted as tacit approval, thereby compromising the institute's commitment to ethical conduct. Furthermore, attempting to subtly alter the results without explicit instruction, hoping to achieve a desired outcome without direct complicity, is also professionally unacceptable. This still involves manipulation and violates the spirit and letter of the ECG, potentially leading to severe reputational damage and loss of trust if discovered. The professional decision-making process in such a situation should involve 1. Recognizing the conflict between the request and established regulations. 2. Consulting the relevant policies (APE) to confirm the prohibited nature of the request. 3. Clearly and professionally communicating the refusal to comply, citing the specific regulations. 4. Initiating the reporting procedure for breaches of academic integrity as stipulated by the institute. 5. Documenting all communications and actions taken. Question 20. System analysis indicates a statistically significant variance in the pass rates across different subject areas within the Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute's recent entrance examinations, with some areas showing unexpectedly low performance. The Institute's administration is concerned about the potential impact on enrollment targets and the Institute's reputation. Which of the following represents the most appropriate initial response to address this situation, adhering strictly to the regulatory framework for higher education entrance examinations in the Republic of Kazakhstan? Option A. Focus on external factors that might have influenced candidate performance, such as changes in secondary school curricula, without conducting an internal review of the examination process itself. Option B. Publicly acknowledge the performance discrepancies and immediately implement a revised examination format for all subjects in the next admission cycle to demonstrate responsiveness to perceived challenges. Option C. Initiate a comprehensive review of the examination design, administration, and scoring procedures for the affected subject areas to identify any systemic issues or procedural irregularities, while simultaneously gathering feedback from examiners and candidates regarding the examination experience. Option D. Recommend a marginal adjustment to the passing thresholds for the underperforming subject areas to mitigate the immediate impact on enrollment figures. The correct answer is C. Initiate a comprehensive review of the examination design, administration, and scoring procedures for the affected subject areas to identify any systemic issues or procedural irregularities, while simultaneously gathering feedback from examiners and candidates regarding the examination experience. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between academic integrity and the pressure to achieve favorable outcomes for the institute. The Akmeshit Humanities and Technical Institute entrance exam regulations, as stipulated by the Ministry of Education and Science of the Republic of Kazakhstan, emphasize fairness, transparency, and the accurate assessment of candidate potential. The challenge lies in balancing the institute's reputation and enrollment targets with the ethical obligation to uphold the integrity of the entrance examination process. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any actions taken do not compromise the validity of the exam or create an unfair advantage for any candidate. The correct approach involves a thorough and impartial review of the examination process, focusing on identifying any systemic weaknesses or procedural irregularities that might have contributed to the observed discrepancies. This approach aligns with the principles of academic governance and the regulatory framework governing higher education entrance examinations in Kazakhstan, which mandates objective assessment and prohibits any form of manipulation or undue influence. Specifically, Article 15 of the Law of the Republic of Kazakhstan on Education and the corresponding rules for admission to educational institutions implementing professional educational programs require that admission be based on objective competitive selection and that examination procedures be transparent and fair. Adhering to these regulations ensures that the institute's admissions are merit-based and uphold public trust. An incorrect approach that involves selectively highlighting positive results while downplaying or ignoring negative trends would be a direct violation of the regulatory framework. This would constitute a failure to conduct a comprehensive and objective analysis, potentially masking systemic issues and leading to a misrepresentation of the examination's effectiveness. Ethically, it would be a breach of professional integrity, as it prioritizes institutional image over accurate assessment and fair play. Another incorrect approach, such as proposing immediate, drastic changes to the examination format without a thorough investigation, would be premature and potentially disruptive. While addressing issues is important, such actions, if not based on evidence derived from a systematic analysis, could inadvertently create new problems or unfairly disadvantage future candidates. This would contravene the principle of evidence-based decision-making, a cornerstone of effective institutional management and regulatory compliance. A third incorrect approach, which involves focusing solely on external factors without examining the internal examination processes, would be a failure to take institutional responsibility. While external factors can influence outcomes, a responsible approach requires an internal review to identify areas for improvement within the institute's control. This would be a dereliction of duty under the aforementioned Kazakhstani educational laws, which place the onus on educational institutions to ensure the integrity of their admission processes. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured, evidence-based approach. This begins with clearly defining the problem and its potential impact. Next, a comprehensive data gathering and analysis phase is crucial, involving a review of examination procedures, candidate performance data, and any reported irregularities. Based on this analysis, potential solutions should be identified, evaluated for their effectiveness and compliance with regulations, and then implemented. Continuous monitoring and evaluation are essential to ensure the effectiveness of implemented changes and to adapt to evolving challenges. This systematic process ensures that decisions are informed, ethical, and aligned with regulatory requirements.